Welcome back to the deep dive. We are officially, finally closing out the year.
We made it.
We did. And, if 2025 felt like sprinting just to keep up with the threat landscape, 2026 it's shaping up to be a marathon run, but at breakneck speed.
Yeah, there's no slowing down.
Not at all. So today we're doing the critical work. We're taking a deep breath, looking past the immediate chaos, and we're synthesizing expert predictions from really all across the security industry to give you the ultimate shortcut to being well-informed about the next era of cyber risk.
And that's the goal, right, to cut through the noise.
Exactly. Our mission today is clear. We are diving deep into the sources, the analyst reports, all the proprietary research, the industry forecasts, to provide a crystallized view of what really matters most in the next 12 months. We're talking everything from, the terrifying acceleration of AI threats and that looming quantum readiness deadline to sweeping regulatory changes and, crucially, those non-negotiable CISO budget priorities for Q1.
Yeah, where the rubber meets the road.
Precisely. But before we plunge into all this essential material, we want to give a massive thank you to our sponsor.
Absolutely.
This deep dive, and really the entire year of 2025, plus our big upcoming loop into 2026, are proudly supported by www.CISOmarketplace.com. If you are navigating that complex vendor landscape and you need clarity on what tools and services actually deliver measurable value for the challenges we're about to discuss, they are your indispensable guide.
They really are. They help cut through the marketing fluff.
They do. They get you straight to the solutions you need. So thank you for sponsoring this dive and for supporting the security community as we run in the new year.
It is an absolutely imperative discussion to be having right now. And the sources, they all reveal a year that's defined not by incremental change, but by a fundamental systemic acceleration of both threats and regulatory pressure.
A systemic acceleration, that's a heavy phrase.
It is. I mean, if we look at the core takeaway that must define 2026, it's this imperative for organizations to shift. A fundamental shift from reactive defense, just scrambling to clean up the last breach, to building continuous proactive resilience into every single layer of the business.
So it's no longer about building walls, it's about being able to take a punch and stay standing.
Exactly. The stakes are simply too high for anything less than a real strategic pivot that recognizes this new reality of speed.
Okay, let's unpack this monumental shift. Let's start right where that acceleration is most, I think, terrifyingly obvious, in the tools and the tradecraft of the adversary. This is section 1. The AI revolution, which is creating an overwhelming velocity problem that far, far outpaces our capacity to defend.
That's the key metric, isn't it? The speed.
Yeah.
The speed of the attack is now the single biggest, most asymmetrical advantage the adversary has.
Asymmetrical, I like that.
Yeah, because we're seeing attackers weaponize speed in a way that just negates years of investment in perimeter defense and manual analysis. It makes it almost irrelevant.
And the sources are all confirming that these malicious networks, they're acting less like scattered criminal groups and more like sophisticated, well-funded organizations.
Startups, basically.
Exactly. We're talking about this concept of fraud as a service accelerating because these networks operate like proper tech startups. They have org charts. They have marketing departments, dedicated support channels.
Subscription models. SLAs even. I mean, the comparison to a tech startup is chillingly accurate. When you look at the research, like what Brittany Allen from SIFT detailed, she noted they aren't just selling tools. They're selling innovation velocity.
Innovation velocity. So they're out-innovating the good guys.
In terms of speed to market, absolutely. They're sharing intelligence, they're coordinating defensive evading tactics, and updating their service offerings faster than any legitimate company can coordinate its countermeasures. They don't have to be the most sophisticated in any one area. They just have to be the fastest to integrate the latest thing, whether that's generative AI or a new zero-day.
And there's this distinct, really alarming timeline here that illustrates this velocity problem in practice.
Right.
We're talking about an exploit that's discovered on a Monday. By Wednesday, it's been validated, packaged for the mass market, and integrated into, say, a Telegram tutorial.
With walkthrough videos and customer support.
Yeah, full customer support.
Yeah.
And then by Friday, it's deployed across thousands of accounts. It's just a terrifyingly efficient supply chain of badness. It's optimized for one thing: time to exploit.
And that extreme speed means any traditional defense strategy, the ones built on quarterly reviews, annual budget cycles, or even weekly threat intel digests, it just cannot compete. It's impossible.
It's an unfair fight.
Completely.
Yeah.
If your fraud team schedules a meeting to discuss an emerging threat that a competitor saw last week, well, the adversary's already pivoted. They've adjusted their payload, and now they're 3 attacks ahead of whatever you're currently trying to defend against.
And that creates this constant state of being behind, this defender fatigue.
Intense operational fatigue. The defenders are perpetually playing catch-up against threats that operate in real time. The traditional systems, the ones we designed for yesterday's slower, more manual attacks, they're just fundamentally overwhelmed by today's AI-driven velocity.
And this velocity is powered by that next evolution of AI in the hands of the adversary. We're moving beyond simple tools to full-blown automated war machines.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not just talking about a co-pilot helping a hacker write a better phishing email anymore. The experts are calling them agentic AI orchestrators. They automate the entire attack kill chain end to end.
And this represents a major, major inflection point in offensive security capability. Keytron Evans noted this specifically. The next step after individual services start using AI is this cross-platform orchestration layer.
So what does that actually look like?
We're talking about sophisticated systems that can autonomously handle reconnaissance, dynamically discover a novel exploit in a target system, craft and personalize the delivery mechanism.
All on its own.
All on its own. It can bypass detection using adaptive evasion techniques, like changing its own code signatures on the fly. And then it can escalate and propagate across a network, all without requiring a single human handoff.
That level of automation, it just fundamentally changes the cadence and scale of attacks. You don't get individual spear phishing attempts anymore. You get these continuous large-scale campaigns that blend precision targeting with automated tradecraft.
They're faster, they're more evasive, and they're far more fluid than anything we've had to defend against previously.
And this isn't sci-fi, right? This isn't just speculation about the future.
No, not at all. The sources point to clear evidence of this evolution already happening. We've seen discoveries like Mall Terminal.
Mall Terminal, what's that?
It's malware powered by GPT-4. It's capable of generating highly personalized ransomware or, say, a reverse shellcode at runtime.
At runtime. So it writes itself inside the target system.
Exactly. The malicious logic is generated dynamically based on the target environment it finds itself in. That effortlessly evades traditional static signature-based detection. And then you have campaigns like PromptBlock, which show the ability to leverage the generative AI models themselves as part of the attack.
Okay, so if the tools are already this capable of creating unique, dynamic payloads, what about the most human element of security? Identity and trust. That brings us to the rise of deepfakes and the looming identity crisis.
Yeah.
Deepfakes are no longer just, proof of concept curiosities you see on social media. They are moving front and center as potent social engineering threats. And the financial losses they're causing are significant and growing fast.
The data point here has to serve as a major wake-up call for any organization that relies heavily on biometrics or traditional identity verification, especially for high-value transactions.
What's the number?
Gartner predicts that by 2026, so very soon, 30% of enterprises will find identity verification unreliable.
Unreliable.
Unreliable. Because AI deepfakes will successfully bypass current biometric authentication systems. We've already seen AI-generated voices used successfully to authorize massive wire transfers. And convincing high-resolution deepfake video is becoming instantly accessible and incredibly convincing to the average person.
So if the attackers can automate the ability to look and sound exactly like a trusted executive or a partner, the human brain, which is already just drowning in alerts, has virtually no chance of telling what's real and what's synthesized.
It has no chance.
So how do we avoid just buying the next generation of biometric tools that are also going to fail?
Yeah.
What are the specific technical capabilities that the sources pointed to that are truly defensive against this?
Well, the defense has to shift. It has to move from trusting the appearance of something to analyzing the provenance and the integrity of the media or the request.
Provenance, okay. Where did it come from?
Exactly. This means CISOs have to prioritize vendors who offer advanced tools capable of detecting injection attacks within the deepfake generation pipeline itself. But more practically, they have to invest in solutions that can inspect synthetic media for subtle artifacts. Temporal inconsistencies in video or spectral markers in audio.
Yeah.
It's not just about filtering spam anymore. It's about verifying reality.
Verifying reality. That's a heavy lift, especially when you're dealing with high-volume transactions and constant requests. And this overwhelming volume, it leads us directly to the next failure point the experts identified, the complete collapse of human oversight. the inevitable failure of human-in-the-loop controls.
Oh, this one is a classic. It's a classic example of security systems being designed by engineers who forget how human beings actually work under stress.
Right.
So organizations are designing these AI agents that require human approval for every critical action, deleting files, modifying code, accessing sensitive systems. But the sheer volume of requests generated by these hyper-efficient agents will fundamentally defeat the purpose of the control.
You're talking about approval fatigue, the concept that Dan Graves introduced. I love the term he used for how users will respond. YOLO mode.
YOLO mode is perfect, and it's terribly accurate. Users will be bombarded with hundreds, maybe thousands of permission requests every single day.
Oh, I can just picture it.
Right. Whether it's approving an internal AI agent's access request or reviewing a flagged transaction, this repetition, this endless cycle of clicking, it leads them to click mindlessly.
Oh.
Or much worse, they will hunt down the setting that lets them enable auto-approve YOLO mode to bypass the safety mechanism entirely.
This just mirrors the historical failure of security alert fatigue perfectly, doesn't it?
Exactly the same principle.
Where users became so desensitized to constant warnings that they just started automatically dismissing them without reading. The result is a system that gives you false comfort. The CISO can say, hey, we have human approval for all critical actions. But in reality, there's no genuine protection because the human is just a rubber stamp.
Exactly. The human-in-the-loop mechanism, it was designed for essential oversight. But it will be defeated not by a sophisticated zero-day attack, but by the simple, powerful human tendency to streamline annoying, repetitive workflows. The AI agents will just be operating autonomously, waiting for the human to exhaust themselves into compliance.
And speaking of operating autonomously, we need to talk about a major hardware shift that enables completely new vectors of stealth. This is the threat of stealthy on-device malware, and it relies on the growing power of NPU, or neural processing unit-enabled devices.
The rise of NPUs fundamentally changes the geometry of the attack. It makes the endpoint the final autonomous staging ground for weaponization.
So it all happens on your machine.
Right on your machine. It enables these highly capable Atlas-like agentic browsers to assemble and deploy malware locally in real time. This effectively collapses the traditional kill chain. It eliminates the need for external command and control servers or, lengthy, high-latency external compilation steps.
Wait, okay, how exactly does the NPU enable this level of stealth? I mean, wouldn't traditional attempts to create malware locally be obvious? Wouldn't they spike your CPU, draw a ton of power?
That's the critical difference. The NPU is a specialized processor. It's designed for massive parallel computation, specifically the kind of math required for AI model inference and training. It's highly optimized for this, so it eliminates the friction.
Oh, okay.
A conventional CPU trying to compile and deploy a complex exploit in the background would absolutely spike power draw and latency. It would be visible to performance monitoring or behavioral analysis tools. The NPU performs the same computational task, the creation and assembly of the malicious logic, quietly, efficiently, and with a minimal power signature.
So the NPU makes on-device malware creation fast, quiet, and power efficient. It turns every modern device into a potential invisible malware factory.
Precisely. And this local autonomy is something that our traditional defense-in-depth architectures were never, ever designed to handle. Think about the process. A malicious prompt or payload, often just plain text, can instruct a local AI model to craft a zero-day exploit dynamically, tailored to the specific vulnerabilities it finds on that machine. The entire genesis of the attack happens behind the curtain of the NPU.
And this creates a devastating defense challenge because the traditional tools, they overlook the source of the problem, and they just can't keep up with the novelty of the payload.
Exactly. Your antivirus and your network monitoring tools, they're usually going to overlook the plain text prompts that trigger the malicious code generation because they're looking for executable code, not instructions for code generation.
A completely different paradigm.
And since the malware is brand new created locally, on demand, a zero-day, by definition, signature-based detection cannot keep pace. The only sustainable path forward is a proactive one. Prevention. That means blocking malicious behavior at the delivery stage, hardening model access on endpoints, and crucially, extending identity and data controls so these AI agents can't just operate as invisible insiders. We have to enforce policy right at the model access layer.
That is a staggering amount of immediate chaos and velocity to handle. Just wow. But security is also a game of foresight, so we have to pull back and look at a slower, but ultimately existential threat. One that has a concrete deadline.
Quantum computing. Let's make that pivot and move to section 2. the quantum imperative, cryptographic risk, and the PQC roadmap.
That's a good transition. While the AI speed defines our present chaos, we have to pull back and look at the slow-moving freight train of risk that has an unalterable deadline, and that is the quantum deadline.
Right.
The quantum threat is no longer a conversation for academic papers or 10-year planning. It is now an operational deadline that dictates spending today. You emphasize that this is no longer theoretical. So what is the deadline we're facing, and what is the immediate risk today that demands action now?
Well, the consensus among the sources, backed by firms like Forrester, is that commercial, fault-tolerant quantum computers will be capable of running Shor's algorithm, and thereby breaking today's asymmetric cryptography, your RSA and ECC, in less than 10 years, and potentially sooner.
Less than 10 years.
And that's the optimistic view, given the regular advances in the field. But the real danger today, and this is crucial for you to internalize, is the activity we call harvest now, decrypt later, or HNDL.
HNDL, meaning the data is being stolen today specifically because adversaries know they will gain the keys to unlock it later.
Precisely. The data most at risk right now is any data that needs to remain confidential for a long time. We're talking trade secrets, classified government information, medical records, proprietary R&D, anything related to national security. Adversaries are actively stockpiling sensitive encrypted data right now, knowing that their investment in future quantum capacity will grant them the ability to crack that encryption once the machines arrive.
So if your data needs to be secure for the next 5 years, it's already compromised today under this threat model.
It's already compromised, yes.
And NIST is pushing the migration timeline hard in response to this risk.
They are. They have to. NIST has been working hard on standardizing post-quantum cryptography algorithms, and the clock is ticking for the sunset of legacy systems. RSA and ECC support, which, form the bedrock of our current digital trust, will be deprecated in 2030 and disallowed entirely by 2035.
So that forces action now.
It forces action now. It makes 2026 the year that leaders must move from simple awareness and planning to concrete, measurable migration action. The window is closing rapidly.
This sounds like an overwhelming, complete cryptographic overhaul. What is the required migration strategy to even begin to tackle this transition?
It demands a multi-layered hybrid approach, the hybrid migration strategy. We can't just simply swap out one algorithm for another. The implementation is incredibly complex, and the PQC standards themselves are still maturing. So we need to combine the emerging post-quantum cryptography, or PQC standards, the new algorithms finalized by NIST, with physical non-mathematical security like quantum key distribution, or QKD.
Okay, so why are both of those essential? Why can't we just rely solely on the new PQC algorithms?
Well, PQC standards are promising. They are algorithms designed to resist known quantum attacks, but they are still based on mathematical complexity.
Meaning if a flaw is found in the math.
They could fail, exactly. QKD, however, is noted as essential for defense in depth because it relies on the immutable laws of physics, specifically quantum mechanics, for the key exchange.
Okay, that's a big difference.
It is. If an eavesdropper tries to intercept the key, the physical state of the quantum bit is disturbed. That disturbance alerts both parties to the intrusion and renders the stolen key completely useless. QKD cannot be broken, even with unlimited computing power. So while enterprise systems are being slowly migrated, starting now with a hybrid approach running both PQC and QKD where it's feasible is the only way to establish true cryptographic resilience.
And we're seeing governments leading this action, giving organizations a clear, tangible deadline that really affects everyone globally.
Absolutely. The Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, for example, is mandating concrete action. Federal departments must develop an initial PQC migration plan starting in April 2026.
April 2026, so right around the corner.
Right around the corner. And completion for high-priority systems is targeted for the end of 2031. This 5-year window for the most critical assets, it establishes a clear, practical roadmap for organizations everywhere. They're essentially saying, the planning phase is over, the implementation phase starts now.
And this mandate for action, it translates directly into a serious financial commitment. What are we seeing in terms of the immediate financial commitment in the budget sources for quantum preparedness?
Forrester predicts that quantum security spending will exceed 5% of the overall IT security budget as organizations race to address this systemic risk. And this isn't small project funding. This is a dedicated, sustained line item that reflects the gravity of the HNDL threat and the complexity of the migration. For a lot of CISOs, this is money that needs to be spent today to protect revenue streams 10 years from now.
That 5% number sounds really significant. Where exactly is all this money going? What are the 4 key areas driving quantum spending in 2026?
The spending is highly targeted. First, retaining consulting services specifically for migration planning and risk assessment. This is highly specialized cryptographic inventory and change management work that very few in-house teams can handle today.
Right, you need experts.
You need experts. Second, product security teams have to immediately begin replacing outdated crypto libraries and hard-coded components in their own software and infrastructure. Third, security teams must treat quantum readiness as a supply chain requirement.
Okay.
They need tools and personnel dedicated to tracking vendor and partner quantum migration plans, ensuring that every single link in their digital supply chain is also getting prepared.
And fourth, I have to imagine inventory is huge here, just finding everything.
It is the foundation. Fourth, organizations must invest heavily in cryptographic discovery and inventory tools. You cannot migrate what you cannot see. Organizations need to identify exactly where the vulnerable RSA and ECC encryption is located, in code signing, in physical access controls, in VPNs, and especially in PKI environments. Without a comprehensive crypto inventory, the entire project stalls immediately.
So the key CISO and CIO action plan for 2026 involves establishing these quantum readiness teams, building these comprehensive inventories across all systems, and prioritizing the longest-lived, most sensitive data that is already subject to HNDL. That's an enormous lift.
It absolutely is. But this threat isn't only about the long-term risk to stored data. The preparation for this deadline is also creating immense, immediate operational pressure on digital trust right now.
Right.
And this is a fascinating convergence point, where this huge existential risk meets daily operational reality.
And that pressure is tied directly to the shrinking lifespan of public TLS certificates, which secure, literally every website and external connection we use.
The CA Browser Forum, which governs certificate issuance, made a unanimous decision to accelerate TLS certificate life cycles. They want to increase resilience and force automation in preparation for PQC migration. This stage transition begins in March 2026. The validity period for public TLS certs will be cut to 200 days, down drastically from the 398 days we're used to today.
200 days? That sounds like a massive operational headache for teams managing thousands of certificates. What's the projected impact on their workload?
The operational load will surge fivefold, 5 times. In 2026, when that 200-day limit hits, simply because renewals have to occur twice as often, with much less margin for error. And that is just the beginning.
Just the start.
By 2029, the lifespan is expected to reach just 47 days. That's the next anticipated transition. The operational load then will surge 10 times higher than it is today. Manual renewal processes where people are relying on calendar alerts and spreadsheets, they become completely unsustainable and dangerously prone to failure.
So automation is no longer a luxury for efficiency. It is the critical dividing line between continuous resilience and, the catastrophic business disruption of major outages or compliance failures.
That's the core insight from Keyfactor. In a post-quantum preparation world, digital trust isn't permanent. It's a continuously proven state. Organizations that don't embrace end-to-end certificate lifecycle automation, from discovery and inventory all the way to automated request, issuance, and renewal, they will face daily risks of outages, misissuance, and compliance failures that can shut down e-commerce operations or internal services without any warning. This operational pressure is the immediate tangible cost of getting ready for quantum.
Okay, we've established the landscape of threats. The AI speed defining our present and the quantum deadline defining our future. Now let's pivot to Section 3, the regulatory jigsaw, compliance shifts and global pressure. Because the regulatory landscape is globalizing and tightening simultaneously, and it's forcing organizations to think about security as resilience.
The regulatory shift is profound. It's moving compliance from a rudimentary checkbox exercise, the minimum standard you have to meet, to a core auditable component of demonstrated business continuity and resilience.
And the centerpiece of this in 2026 appears to be the EU's Digital Operational Resilience Act, or DORA, and its deep convergence with business resilience.
DORA will absolutely hit its stride in 2026. It's putting mandatory regulatory pressure not only on financial entities operating within the EU banks, insurance companies, exchanges, but critically on their critical third-party suppliers who provide ICT services.
So the supply chain again.
The supply chain again. The sources stress that companies must move beyond just rudimentary compliance and actually demonstrate measurable, continuous resilience against major outages and cyber shocks with rigorous testing and detailed reporting.
So the immediate impact for organizations globally is that third-party risk management is no longer a one-time onboarding formality where you just send a questionnaire and put it in a folder.
Correct. For any technology vendor supplying the financial sector, their security posture ceases to be an internal matter. It becomes an integral, continuously audited component of the financial entity's business continuity plan. Organizations have to ensure that their key vendors and suppliers are just as resilient as they are. This means DORA's influence is going to ripple globally, establishing a new, very high operational standard for third-party risk management and continuous oversight.
Now, DORA focuses primarily on financial services, but the EU has another major piece of legislation, the Cyber Resilience Act, CRA, which is set to completely blindside global software and device makers.
The CRA is moving very rapidly from a future concern to an immediate obligation in 2026. Requirements start on September 11, 2026, and full application follows by December 11, 2027.
So that's soon.
And this is a crucial distinction. This applies to any organization selling internet-connected products or software into the EU bloc, even if they are non-EU companies. If you sell it in Germany, you have to comply.
And the scope of devices is massive, right? It covers consumer products we all use every single day.
Absolutely. The CRA applies to a staggering range of products that are deemed with digital elements and security functionalities. This includes everything from smart home products like smart door locks, baby monitors, and connected toys, to personal wearable health technology. For the manufacturer, they have to attest that these products meet minimum cybersecurity standards by design and throughout the entire product lifecycle.
This creates an immediate and massive software impact because companies now have to be able to prove they meet specific security and transparency requirements for every single item they sell.
The rush to comply is going to immediately expose massive visibility gaps, particularly in software inventories and supply chains. Organizations selling software into the EU must soon prove continuous vulnerability management, meaning they have an ongoing process to find and fix flaws.
All right.
They have to maintain mandated SBOM software bills of materials for every product and meet extremely rapid disclosure timelines if a vulnerability is discovered. And Saurabh Kazarunian also pointed out the immense complexity that AI-generated code will introduce here.
How does AI complicate proving provenance? I mean, if I use a copilot to generate 30% of my code, how can I guarantee the security and compliance of that component?
Precisely. The CRA requires the manufacturer to take responsibility for all software components, including those sourced externally or generated automatically. When you use AI to generate code, proving provenance, that is, tracing the origin, the licensing, the security integrity of that block of code becomes exponentially harder. Organizations just lack the tools right now to adequately audit and track AI-generated components, and that creates a regulatory and legal liability for every piece of software sold into the EU.
So whether you're a financial institution dealing with DORA or a global software maker dealing with CRA, the regulatory pressure is converging into this global compliance maze, and it's demanding greater accountability at the very top.
The pressure is truly global. It's linking jurisdictions and enforcing high standards through either financial penalty or loss of market access. Look at the U.S. SEC's new cybersecurity disclosure rules, which mandate rapid transparency and accountability following a material cyber incident. This is ushering in a new era of accountability.
An era where the board is on the hook.
Exactly. Increased responsibility and potential liabilities being placed directly on board members and senior executives regarding cyber incidents and security practices.
This strategic shift means we have to move beyond that dangerous, yet very common assumption that compliance equals security.
Exactly. Mature organizations have to shed that delusion. Achieving regulatory checkboxes, whether it's an ISO certification or meeting the minimum requirements of DORA, doesn't mean they're operationally safe. Instead, they have to integrate continuous testing and real-world attack simulations into their operations to quantify risk in business terms. That integration results in smarter, faster decision-making and genuine protection, rather than just paper compliance. If you can't measure your resilience in dollars saved or business continuity maintained, you aren't speaking the C-suite's language.
Okay, we've laid out the entire landscape, the threats of AI speed and the quantum deadline and the external constraints of global regulation. Now, let's bring it down to the ground and talk about the money. Section 4, the CISO's mandate, shifting budgets and strategic priorities for 2026.
This is where strategy meets capital allocation and operational reality. And the macro figures, they confirm the urgency that's driving these massive investment choices.
The macro budget reality shows that cybersecurity spending is experiencing exponential growth, which reflects the global scale of the problem. Global spending on cybersecurity products and services is predicted to hit $522 billion in 2026.
Wow.
That's up significantly from $454 billion in 2025. That growth rate is almost unparalleled in IT spending.
And that growth is driven by the sheer, terrifying urgency of the problem. Cybercrime costs are predicted to reach $10.5 trillion annually by 2025.
$10.5 trillion.
Trillion. The analyst insight here is stark and compelling. Cybersecurity is the only line item that theoretically has no spending limit. Budget increases dramatically after an attack when reputation, revenue, and regulatory penalties all hit at once. So the wisest, most forward-looking organizations are spending proactively before they are forced to. They're investing in resilience rather than recovery.
And this financial criticality, the strategic necessity, it forces a reframing of the CISO role itself, from a technical guardian and perimeter fixer to a strategic business enabler.
Absolutely. Corey Neckreiner noted that the role of the CISO must be redefined as a strategic decision-making position, requiring frequent, high-level, board-level reporting. The CISO's job now is to ensure that security initiatives align directly with business growth, market expansion, and shareholder value. Security can no longer be a technical silo that only speaks in vulnerability counts or patch percentages.
It has to be expressed in business terms, using that shared C-suite language.
Yes, using the C-suite language of risk reduction, value creation, and impact mitigation. Furthermore, the sources indicate that CISOs will increasingly be judged on concrete outcomes, moving away from soft, easily manipulated metrics. Boards are tired of hearing about training completion rates or phishing click rates.
Yeah, vanity metrics.
The vanity metrics are out. The new focus will be on tangible, measurable results. Risk reduction, quantified in monetary terms, improved identity hygiene scores, tighter access control, and measurably faster mean time to response. The key question shifts dramatically from did we train them to the more critical did we reduce the business risk.
Okay, let's look at the concrete areas demanding immediate budget allocation in Q1 2026. The first non-negotiable priority is architectural. Zero trust is non-negotiable.
We've seen persistent, widespread failure points in traditional perimeter defenses, especially after the massive shift to hybrid work. Corey Neckreiner stated that traditional VPNs and legacy remote access tools, they remain high-value targets, and their inherent weaknesses and misconfigurations are expected to cause at least one-third of all breaches in 2026.
A third of all breaches?
One-third. If you grant a compromised credential full access to your internal network via a VPN, the default access everything model makes that VPN a giant, irresistible backdoor.
So ZTNA Zero Trust Network Architecture is the necessary solution that must be operationalized immediately. But what does operationalization really mean for the average business beyond just buying a new tool?
It means a complete philosophical shift where identity becomes the new perimeter. ZTNA operationalization is accelerating across the board, even among small to mid-sized businesses, SMBs, who might have previously thought it was too complex. Architecturally, ZTNA removes the need to expose a potentially vulnerable VPN port to the open internet. It has the ZTNA provider secure the initial service connection through a cloud platform. And critically, it implements microsegmentation, limiting lateral movement by ensuring users and devices are granted access only to the specific internal services they require for their job. This reduces the potential blast radius of any compromised account to near zero.
And Darren Anstey framed it perfectly by connecting it all the way back to the quantum threat.
He did. He argued that zero trust becomes a baseline requirement in a quantum threat world where implicit, persistent trust is an unbearable liability. You have to continuously verify, assess context, and explicitly grant access for every single interaction, for every user, for every connection. If we can't trust the math post-quantum, we certainly can't trust implicit network access.
Which brings us to the second critical priority that addresses that velocity problem we started with. AI takes over detection and response. Given the AI-powered threats we discussed earlier, human-led defense simply cannot scale to meet the adversary's speed.
The asymmetry is just too great. AI has to shift from being a nice-to-have to a critical, baseline necessity for network operations and security. It enables admins to scale their knowledge and deal with these complex, distributed environments, cloud, edge, on-prem, without dramatically increasing headcount or succumbing to alert fatigue.
So where must the investment focus go?
The investment focus must be squarely on automated, AI-driven anomaly detection, predictive modeling, and automated responses to combat threats at machine scale and velocity. Analyst data shows this trend is already mature. A 2025 survey showed that 31% of organizations are already using AI in core security workflows like triage and threat hunting, and another 56% are actively piloting tools. This trajectory is a clear, non-negotiable path for surviving the AI attack landscape.
But the experts also cautioned against just handing the reins entirely over to autonomous AI, especially given that governance challenge we mentioned earlier. What's the recommended implementation strategy?
It's what the sources call the hybrid AI approach, and it's about smart delegation. Use AI and automation for the high-volume, routine, and rapid tasks, things like initial alert triage, log analysis, data enrichment, and compiling initial incident timelines. But, crucially, you maintain a human in the loop, a HITL, for the judgment-heavy decisions.
Such as high-risk remediation.
Exactly. Human judgment remains necessary for incident containment that affects business operations, high-risk remediation actions like shutting down systems, and ethical decision-making regarding data deletion or public disclosure. The goal of AI is augmentation, making the human analyst 100 times faster and more accurate, not outright replacement. That balance is the key to effective, scalable defense in 2026.
Okay, our third legit priority focuses on the massive expansion of the data surface area, securing data at the sprawling edge. We are seeing an exponential climb in enterprise data volumes. Nearly a third of companies saw data volumes grow by 30% in 2025 alone, driven by IoT, AI training, and real-time processing.
This extreme data sprawl demands a fundamental shift in protection strategy. We have to move security strategies away from perimeter defense, which is increasingly irrelevant in ZTNA models, and toward data-native protection that's embedded directly into data management architectures. The focus shifts entirely to securing the data itself, classifying it, and enforcing policy right at the file level, rather than just protecting the network container it sits in.
And a huge portion of this data is increasingly residing on employee-owned devices or personal hardware, which makes endpoint security a real philosophical dilemma regarding employee privacy.
That's the conflict. Traditional approaches that demand full control and lock down entire employee-owned devices, they clash heavily with employee expectations for personal privacy, especially in hybrid and BYOD environments. You just can't mandate full surveillance of a personal phone or laptop.
So what's the solution?
The solution being prioritized by forward-looking enterprises is mobile virtualization architectures.
Can you explain that architecture and why it's the solution to that privacy conflict?
Sure, think of it like a digital fortress that's built inside a foreign country. Mobile virtualization involves separating enterprise data and operations entirely from the employee-owned hardware using advanced containerization or virtual desktop technologies. The employee uses their personal device for their personal life, photos, social media, but the sensitive enterprise applications, identity, and data are secured within an isolated, encrypted container environment on that same device.
So instead of trying to secure the entire device, which violates privacy, you secure the data within a contained environment. That preserves privacy by architecture and not just by policy.
Precisely. The forward-looking enterprises are realizing they do not need to own or completely secure the physical device to secure the business. They just need to protect the enterprise data, applications, and identity while inheriting none of the risk or liability associated with the employee's unmanaged personal hardware. This is the future of secure enterprise mobility.
Finally, we need to talk about the physical realm, which is becoming increasingly digitized, connected, and consequently very vulnerable. Q1 2026 Budget Priority 4, Hardening Critical Infrastructure and Operational Technology, OT.
This is a matter of physical safety and societal resilience. Attacks on critical infrastructure utilities, retail, manufacturing, logistics, they're growing exponentially. And they're driven by motives, including causing physical harm, commercial disruption, and damaging national reputation. The stakes here translate directly into power outages, supply chain failures, and even environmental contamination.
What does the market data tell us about the response to this accelerating threat?
The industrial cybersecurity market is growing incredibly fast. It's projected to hit $51.1 billion by 2035, with a compound annual growth rate of 9.1%. And within this market, network security remains the dominant segment, holding a 32.7% share in 2025. This reflects the crucial, immediate need to protect communication paths without disrupting older operational technology OT systems like SCADA controllers. They're often decades old and can't support modern endpoint security tools directly.
And the core resilience strategy here focuses entirely on separation and continuous monitoring, using past failures as stark lessons.
Absolutely. The Colonial Pipeline incident highlighted the critical necessity of IT/OT segmentation. Operational technology systems, the ones that control physical processes, must be isolated from the standard enterprise IT network. This prevents an incident on the email server from crossing over and causing a physical disruption.
Right.
And deploying continuous monitoring across these highly specialized OT systems is essential to detect anomalies and flag early signs of compromise like unauthorized changes to controller logic or unexpected traffic patterns before physical damage occurs. We saw that with the Oldsmar water treatment plant incident.
We have covered so much ground today. The terrifying speed of AI attacks, the concrete deadlines set by quantum computing, the globalization of compliance under DORA and CRA, and the 4 non-negotiable budget priorities for CISOs in 2026. Zero trust operationalization, AI-driven defense, data-native security, and robust OT hardening.
The convergence points are undeniable. We are standing at a pivotal moment where reactive firefighting is being replaced by strategic, continuous resilience. The challenge now lies entirely in execution, but the blueprint, the priorities for funding, architecture, and technology, is now crystal clear for every organization listening.
And that strategic shift, as we've discussed, it involves embracing systems that are incredibly capable, frighteningly fast, and increasingly autonomous. But that speed brings us right back to the fundamental question of human judgment, which we saw fail in the approval fatigue section.
It does. And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to take into the new year. It's one that underpins every single tactical decision we've discussed today. The ultimate challenge of 2026 is governance, not just code.
Governance, not code.
Remember that the AI systems we are building and deploying, whether they are malicious orchestrators or autonomous defense agents, while they're astonishingly competent, they are powerful but non-conscious entities. They lack moral judgment, they lack conscience, they lack true empathy. They simply follow the structure and the data that's provided to them.
So they'll do what they're told, good or bad.
Exactly. If the deployment strategy for these powerful tools focuses solely on cutting costs or maximizing output without clearly defined ethical and governance boundaries, the technology's liberating potential will inevitably lead to unintended consequences or even profound security risks. The ethical burden of ensuring that these powerful tools are aligned with human values and intentionality rests entirely on us, on the human custodians.
That demands deliberate reflection and action today, not just on what the AI can do, but what it should do, and who is accountable when it doesn't. A powerful thought to end on as we look toward a future defined by acceleration. Thank you for joining us for this crucial deep dive into the security landscape of 2026. If you're ready to start building your PQC migration plan or need to implement ZTNA now, check out our sponsor, www.silismarketplace.com. Until next time, stay secure and keep learning.